speaking on keto versus low-fat plant-based diet, exact opposite diet. This was what's called a crossover study. And let me explain what a crossover study is. A crossover study is, let's say me and Scott and all of you listening, we're in a study. Let's say there's 100 of us. And they divide us into two groups. Group A will start on the keto diet, and Group B will start on the plant-based diet. And you'll eat that for a while, and then you will switch, and you will eat the exact opposite diet. So if you were eating the keto, now you'll go on the plant-based, and in the opposite side, the plant-based will go on the keto. So that everybody does both diets, so you can see how it affects everybody. Because what you could do is if you just do two sides, the plant-based diet and the keto diet, you'd say, well, this worked for them, but who knows? Maybe that would work better, or vice versa. You don't know. But if everybody does both, then you get an idea how it impacts everybody in the study. A crossover study by the National Institutes of Health looked at the impact of an ad libitum high-fat ketogenic diet. What's ad libitum? That means to eat till you're comfortably full and nobody's telling you, oh, don't eat or only eat this many calories. It's just, here's the food, eat as much of it or as little of it as you want. And so it was high-fat ketogenic diet. By the way, ketogenic diet, what happens is, for those of you who don't know, I imagine now most people know what a ketogenic diet is. It's a very high-fat, low-carb diet. And our body, instead of over time, can transition from burning carbs, which is the normal fuel for our body, it can transition to burning ketones. And so it's basically burning fat for fuel. So you could do either. It's more common for humans to use carbs for fuel, but regardless, so they put them on the high-fat diet, so they're burning fat, and they have the plant-based diet where they're burning carbs. And check out the diet. The high-fat diet was 10% carbohydrates and 75% fat, contrasted with 10% fat, super low fat, and 75% carb plant-based diet. This is a great study because it's exactly what the contrast. When you talk about low-fat plant-based, this is what you're talking about, roughly 10% fat diet, or the keto diet, with 10% carbs. And everyone went on a low-fat plant-based diet for 2 weeks. And at another point, the same people went on a meat-based keto diet for 2 weeks. And the hypothesis of the study, because these people were, believers in the keto diet, that the high-carb plant-based diet would be inferior to the high-fat diet. It was assumed that because the low-fat diet was higher in carbs, it would increase insulin and make the people hungry. You're going to hear all over the internet, insulin is the thing that makes you fat. So you're going to get hungry, and you're going to eat more food because you're eating carbs. But what happens when you actually put it to the test? It turned out that while they were on the low-fat plant-based diet, they ate on average almost 700 fewer calories.
Wow.
That is incredible.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Now, like 70 calories would have impressed me. 700.
Yes. And so now, because one of the arguments for ketogenic diet is that it suppresses appetite, which it does. I'm not denying that. It significantly suppresses appetite compared to the standard American diet. But compared to a whole food plant-based diet, not so much. It does, you're still going to lose weight on it, but you're not going to lose nearly as much as on a low-fat plant-based diet. Now, somebody might be keen thinking, it's probably because who could eat nasty low-fat plant-based, right? Maybe that's why, right? But here's the thing. We're going to get back to that. They ate less, even though they ate till they were comfortably full on both diets. Somebody might say, Chad, but that's not a good study. They should have been forced to eat the exact same amount of calories. No, that's the point. The point is, how much would you eat if you went on these diets?
Yeah. Well, how does the real world work, right? It's like, if you're on this diet, how do you actually eat?
And Scott, take a guess. Why would a whole fat or a whole food, low fat, plant-based diet, why do you think people would eat less calories? What would you think?
Because your stomach gets full faster because it's a bunch of fiber.
That's exactly it. So you're eating a lot of fiber, and fiber has no calories, and and there's water in it. And so what does it do? It bulks up your stomach, and your stomach's like, stop, that's enough. I've had enough. Don't feed me anymore. Whereas when you're eating something like meat, oil, high-fat foods, they're very small and they have a ton of calories, but they do suppress your hunger because your stomach can actually only let through the sphincter a small amount of fat at a time. So what happens is you eat a bunch of meat or a bunch of fatty foods, and your stomach's like, please don't. I can only go through so much. And so it slowly lets it out. So you don't get hungry for a really long time, but you'll still eat less on a low-fat plant-based diet. But then
now, Chad, you're not eating sugar on this high carb version.
Thank you.
Right? Because that's a calorie dense, fiberless
You're
food.
exactly right. Thank you for saying this was a whole food, a low fat plant based diet. That means we're not talking refined foods. We're not talking sugar. We're not talking candy bars. We're not talking, because white bread, you're talking whole, unrefined. When you say that, we're talking only whole grains. You could, you're not having fruit juice. You're having fruit. You're not having white bread. You're having whole grains. You're not. You get the idea. And so, check this out. There was a slight weight loss while on the high-fat diet, but the weight loss was only statistically significant while on the plant-based diet. They specifically lost more fat while on the low-fat diet, because the argument, they thought, no, you're going to lose more fat on the high-carb or the high-fat diet, because high-fat, the keto diet, you're going to burn fat, so you're going to burn up more fat. Well, it turns out it's not actually the case. They enjoyed their meals equally on both diets and